All right, Scott, let's remind everybody Real Water Sports. They are hosting attendees for the BRAG Summit. And if you want to stay at the Waterman's Retreat, you can save 20% by letting them know that you're doing the BRAG Retreat or the BRAG Summit.
Yeah. You know what? This is one of those summits that I would love to attend. I think there's a lot of insight that myself and you as both as long time surfers, we think we understand some of the I mean, I guess maybe we're just pompous, but I feel like, oh yeah, I know how to help somebody in a situation, but I'm sure that if I went in there with an open mind and less ignorance, I would learn a lot about how to um, you know, deal with a situation that would be unnerving and frankly a little bit chaotic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's anybody of any level can learn something from this. These are the top level responders for big waves, and then they translate that, of course, to just everyday ocean use. But it's going to be August 16th and 17th in the Outer Banks, presented by the Ben Carlson Foundation, by the way. And then, of course, Real Water Sports is right down the street. And then they have the Waterman's Retreat, which is their condo adjacent to the retail store. So if you want to participate in the brag thing, go for it. Save 15% by letting Real Water Sports know. And then also, they're doing 10% off camps. So if you want to book a camp anytime before August 12th, Scott and I did the foiling camp. They have other like learn how to surf camps, a bunch of stuff, and you can save 10% off with code CAMP10. And again, stay at the Waterman's Retreat. It's first class, actually.
Yeah, the other thing I would suggest if there's any, up and coming um big wave surfers, for lack of a better phrase, this is a great opportunity to dial in with these people at that put on the summit. I mean, talk about a great networking opportunity for you. If you're in your late 20s, early 30s, and you want to meet these people, these are the people you're going to be surfing with at these big wave spots anyway. Better to understand them, know them, be in their network, get insight from them, basically befriend them. This is a great networking chance. And you're going to get to meet the people at Real Water Sports as well. So this seems like a no-brainer if you're a big wave surfer.
That's a great point. Just for the record, the leadership team at Bragg, founders and board of directors are Greg Long, Cole Christensen, and Brian Kailana. So, how's that?
Yeah, I can't speak if those guys are going to be at this particular summit, but you want to be in there with those guys.
Yeah,
Regardless,
exactly.
whoever's there, it's going to be beneficial to you.
Yeah. So, anyways, realwatersports.com for all of your, when we say all your water sport needs, truly mean it from the beginning all the way up to Bragg Summit. So, realwatersports.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing.
Yeah, guy. Yeah, guy. David Lee Scales, Scott Bass with you here. It is the Spit Podcast. We talk all things surf here on this podcast and sometimes some other stuff like maybe book suggestions or streaming TV show that you're into. Um, David, good morning and welcome. It's, by the way, July 30th. We're getting towards the end of the month here. What are you listening to there,
Sorry,
bud?
I clicked play on the WSL on something
Oh,
WSL
oh my God.
accidentally.
You're watching the longboard finals or
I mean,
something like,
it's the
huh?
most important news of the week, isn't it? Shouldn't we lead with the longboard event at the at the
Oh
US
my God.
Open?
Oh, Lordy.
I'm just
No, we
kidding.
should.
Anyways, yes, welcome back to the show, Scott. Good to see you. How you feeling today?
I'm glad you bring that up. I feel great. I feel much better. I'm getting back my health and my energy. And it's funny you say that. Waterways reached out to me. They probably reached out to you too. And they're like, hey, do a podcast with Nathan Hedge. We'd like to promote our upcoming um,
Wellness
Tavarua
retreat.
retreat with Nathan Hedge. And I've been putting it off, and I've been putting off a lot of podcasts just because I've been so down with this summertime flu, for lack of a understanding of what it is. But my energy level's been way off, and so I apologize. I was supposed to do something with Nathan Hedge, and I haven't. But you can join Nathan Hedge, and I'm reading now from the Waterways thing real quick. And by the way, I would love to do this. I'm like, you know, the middle-aged surfer that needs this kind of thing. But anyway, for an immersive week designed to transform your body and mind as well as your surf game, this carefully curated program balances surf-focused training, physical fitness, mindfulness practices, and personal growth, all in an inspiring setting, which would be Tavarua. Whether you aim to get the wave of your life, refine your surfing, deepen your mindfulness practice, or unlock new physical potential, this retreat has everything. So go on to Waterways Surf Adventures, and if you're interested in hanging with Nathan Hedge, I imagine I can't speak for this, but I bet Tom Carroll will be there as well.
I think
Wellness and surf.
specifically, no, you're
Yeah.
right. I think specifically they do have Tom Carroll scheduled for the meditation and breathwork classes at that retreat, which lead with Tom Carroll. I love Nathan Hedge as well, of course, but Tom Carroll's going to be there.
Well, I don't know, Nathan. I'm sure he's a wonderful human. I would like to interview him, the Hedgehog, right? This guy's kind of, as I recall, Nathan, when I think of Nathan, I think of kind of a frothy Aussie that's just like going no matter what, going to go up to the top of the ledge and take off in the pit. And, he seemed like a frother. Like the mindfulness thing is interesting to me. It's not really what I expect when I think of Nathan Hedge. I don't think of calm and serene. I think of frothy guy.
Nathan Hedge walked so that Italo could run.
Wow. Okay.
He was Italo before Italo even knew who he was. Before Italo even had one sip of Red Bull, Nathan Hedge was running laps around the planet. And I mean, seriously, he was hyperactivity kind of even in his surfing. That's kind of his style of surfing, but tenacious, unbelievable. But I think this is, a new phase of Nathan's career is this more grounded version of himself. And I never anticipated the health bent from him, but he is as fit as you could possibly get. Like he is very serious about health and wellness. So I'm glad to see him doing things like this and sharing it, and turning it into a business.
Yeah, me too. This retreat with Nathan Hedge is September 6th through the 13th. So you got plenty of time to get your act together. If you've never been to Tavarua, this is an absolute, probably at the top of the bucket list for surfing. You got to go to Tavarua one time in your life, and why not do it and take in this retreat at the same time, September 6th through the 13th at Tavarua. So reach out to Waterways. They'll get you hooked into this wellness and surf retreat hosted with Nathan Hedge.
So considering our listeners are podcast listeners, they might enjoy. They're also doing a bunch of talks, like Q&As throughout the week. One is going to be with Tom Carroll and John Roseman about the early days of Tavarua and Cloudbreak. They're going to be doing one on mental resilience with Laura Enever and Nathan Hedge. They're going to do one on that big Code Red swell at Cloudbreak because Nathan was there, and they're having Alex Gray sit in for that Q&A too.
Oh, that right there is going to be killer.
So firsthand stories and Q&A. I mean, this is like an incredible retreat.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, so check it out. Anyway, at the risk of sounding like we were plugging that, we were, because I'm a fan of this retreat. I'm a fan of Tavarua. Have you been to Tavarua? I think I've asked you this.
I have
Okay,
not.
well, that's okay. It's on your bucket list.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah,
Reach out to
absolutely.
Brian. You know who would love this? Your wife and your kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
yeah. Anyway, enough of that. On to the next thing. Dave, do we have some stories to tell?
Well, did you watch How Surfers Get Paid?
I did.
Okay,
The
good.
Negotiators.
I was going to be so disappointed if you didn't because I have lots of thoughts.
Oh, well, let's hear your thoughts. I absolutely watched it. Of course, we're talking about the Stab series, How Surfers Get Paid. It's available if you're a premium member of Stab, and you should be. If you're not, you're missing out. And this one was about the agents and the managers of pro surfing, and whether they're good or bad. And there's a big segment. Really, the big reveal is Taj Burrow and sort of his experience with both Billabong and Creatures of Leisure, and sort of the fiscal and management drama that went down there. So I'll lead with that. What are your thoughts, David, on the overall episode?
Loved the episode. It's an hour long. It's like 55 minutes. I found it to be incredibly insightful. I love hearing the actual numbers. For some reason it's scintillating, but also I think it's just helpful and beneficial. Like, I think it's good to pull back the curtain on stuff like this. I think it empowers whoever's negotiating nowadays to understand the lay of the land a little bit better, and just the way that the wheels turn. I think is good for the individual athletes to understand kind of the backroom workings, basically. So I love having all the information out there. The other thing is I feel like you really get a sense for these surfers' personalities through these interviews, almost more so than you do from a straightforward interview. Um, Turns out I love Taj now more than ever. He was Not only was he savvy in his like, he doesn't work with a manager. I loved hearing his thoughts on why he doesn't work with managers, but he was savvier than I expected him to be in terms of negotiating his own deals. And then also the humanity and humility of him. Like, he is definitely going to try to scrap for every dollar in those paychecks and negotiating. But at the end of the day, he's like, we can tell the story, but I went up to my longtime friend, who's the founder and owner of Creatures of Leisure. And I just said, hey, man, let's just hug it out. Like, forget about the past is the past. Let's just hug. And hearing him say that, I'm like, thank you. Like, humanity is kind of more important than the dollars and cents at the end of the day? So personalities, I feel like, is what I got to know through this series more than anything.
Yeah, that's a great take. And I think that's sort of speaks to all of these episodes, right? Is that we get a little deeper dive in understanding the nuance of these personalities and how they behave in certain situations, which could be stressful or whatever the case may be. And I would agree with you. Taj is I was already a huge fan
Me
of
too.
Taj Burrow, and now even more so. And um, kind of interesting, right? The whole creatures of leisure thing. I don't know. Look, you should watch the episode. We would be butchering it if we tried to
Yeah.
regurgitate the fine details and points, but watch the episode. But
But the getting to know their personalities is all we ever want anyways.
right.
When I read magazines when I was growing up, I idolized these guys, but I really wanted to know more about them. And then social media came along and it was like, great. Like, I get to see kind of the inner workings or just what their home looks like, little stuff like that. And this, I think, is an additional, and that's honestly what we try to do with the interviews that we do, on our podcast. Um, and so this is an additional layer of that. It's not only getting to hear the person's insights and worldview, but getting them to reveal their paychecks, which is kind of fascinating. So it's a great, great thing. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, when somebody reaches out and goes, "Hey, I'm putting out a book, or I've got a retreat, or I've got a new movie, will you interview me?" You and I both, we kind of cringe. It's kind of like, I don't really want to talk about promoting your thing, but we will. And I want to help you succeed, and we'll talk about that. But really, what we're trying to do is get into the stuff that interests you and me and our listeners, which is this nuance that we're talking about. This, like, a peeling back of the layers of the person and getting to really understand who they are. And these episodes do a great job of that, whether it be Jordy Smith or Jamie O'Brien. Um, sort of the one. Let me ask you this. Was there somebody in this episode who you kind of cringed and you went, "Oh, that's kind of unfortunate that they put themselves out that way"?
I can't think of one off the top of my head. Who do you have in mind?
Well, I have had a few interactions with this person, and I like this person a lot. But I will say that I thought Graham Stapleberg came off a little um, lacking empathy, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, I can
Sort of
see
the
that.
way he kind of like laughed at Taj and kind of went, "Oh, too bad for you."
Yeah, he goes,
Just
"What's another 300K like to you?" I think is what he said, right?
yeah, it kind of came off a little. I don't know. Am I wrong here, or did it seem
Mm.
like they could have? I mean, I wonder if he's okay with the way that this was edited, because I just felt like um, he was kind of flipping the bird a little bit.
Well, I think almost embedded in the story is us, the surfers, versus them, the corporate entities. And so
Yeah, those two
Graham,
guys could be best friends for all we know, Taj and Graham, and so he's just kind of going,
so
"Oh, too bad, Taj," and they're on the phone right now laughing about it, but it was edited in such a way that it seemed a little bit aloof.
yeah, yeah. But I think that again, it does reconfirm that narrative of you have this corporate you know, uh, entities, and Graham is just representing that corporate entity more than he is representing
Billabong in this
himself.
situation, it would be Billabong.
Correct.
Right.
And so just the way that the whole story is set up, it's almost a David versus Goliath thing. You have this young, talented surfer. He's an individual. He's scrapping to get by. And then you have this corporation who is selling board shorts around the world and wetsuits, and they're just going to try to pilfer this guy's talent. That's almost, you know, the storyline. So I don't know, Graham, I agree with what you said. I didn't make a personal assessment of Graham through that. I saw him as just representing the brand, you know, and he is responsible for the purse strings.
And for the record, like I said, Graham's a good guy. I've had great interactions with Graham and appreciate him. And frankly, I'm glad he's the salt in the room at the WSL. It seems like he's kind of keeping keeping the ship afloat from a surfer's perspective standpoint until we got Ryan Crosby in here. But regardless, that was the one thing where I was kind of like, oh, that's a little bit weird. The other interesting thing here is when you look at the guys that did have management and guys who didn't have an agent and or manager, who did better or who did worse. And Mick Fanning apparently absolutely killed it without having any management. He just went in there and went, no, like he had a good enough business head on his shoulders to do really well for himself. And I think Taj did the same. I think Taj did really well for himself, basically without having a manager.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's really almost impossible to compare their deals with the next generation who did have managers. The only comparison would be what would Mick have negotiated? What would a manager have negotiated for Mick? What did Mick get on his own? What would a manager have done for him? That would be the fair comparison. And to be honest, I don't think a manager would have done better for Mick in that moment. I think the reason that managers and agents came in was more a reflection of the way that the industry was organically changing, and there was actually a need for management at a certain point. And prior to that point, the athletes had enough situational awareness to where they could negotiate, and they're in a sense of their own value to where they could negotiate their own deals, you know?
And it was also probably, and I don't know, Mick could probably speak to this, and maybe he kind of did, but Mick made a bunch. We're kind of speaking about this reef sandal where Mick went in there and he basically negotiated his own deal. And he's like, I don't know, give me X a flat rate, and yeah, give me a piece of every unit sold. I don't know, give me a tenth or
$1.50
a
per
buck
sandal.
50 of every. And I sense that nobody, Reef nor Mick, expected this sandal to like go crazy the way it went crazy, and it went crazy in sales. And so the unit side of it, $1.50 per unit that Mick nailed. Reef was at one point looking at it and going, "Holy mackerel, that's a lot of money we're giving to Mick Fanning." And originally we thought, okay, yeah, maybe we'll sell X amount of units. We didn't know it was going to be X times 1,000 of these units. And now all of a sudden that $1.50 is a big number. And so I'm not so sure that there was like negotiating prowess on Mick's standpoint. And I'm also not so sure that Reef, blew it. They were just kind of like, okay, we'll give you $1.50. Maybe we'll sell X. And so the real negotiating kind of came in afterwards when they're like, hey, let's renegotiate. And Mick's like, no,
Yeah.
why would I do that? That's silly.
Yeah.
And let's buy him out. And Mick's like, no. and I, just so you know, I think that I believe Reef just like launched like the 20th anniversary or the 25th anniversary of this Reef Mick Fanning sandal. And they did it in a shoe or something like that.
They've made it in a bunch of different colorways. Like it's not just one Mick Fanning sandal. It's now that opener in a bunch of different sandals. So Mick's making, it got far bigger than anybody anticipated. And Santiago admitted that Santiago Aguirre admitted that Mick never made less than a couple $100,000 a year off that deal in royalty, and not more than $1 million a year. So he goes somewhere in between there. So Mick's been making that per year just off the royalties of that sandal still to this day. So
yeah. Yeah.
Really, really profitable deal for Mick.
That was it. That was one of those numbers that I think you and I appreciate. Like that was like news to me. Like, wow. I mean, I knew he killed it, but wow, he's killing it. You know what I mean?
Totally. So more interesting to me, like I didn't come into this wondering, is it better to have a manager or not? I think the obvious answer there is if the manager can make more than what they're costing you, then have them. You know, like if I can broker a deal for $100,000 and the manager takes 10% and they can get me 120, then they're worth it. Then I'm netting, you know, eight extra $1,000 in that scenario. So you should be able to figure that. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, and frankly, you kind of need to have some self-evaluation. Like
Yes, this is the key.
I would need an agent. I know that I'm just a pushover. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. You know, like
Yeah,
I'm not a negotiator, you know, like, and part of that is
completely.
perhaps because I'm a people pleaser. Like you need to understand who you are. And basically, I think you will have a, if you have enough, you know, if you have your parents around, you have people that love you around you, they're going to go, dude, you need an agent, you know, or they're going to
Yeah.
go, you know what, you're really good at this. Go. And in fact, if we looked at you and I, like, I would suggest to you that you would be great without an agent. I think you could go in there and go, look, I've done the research. Here's what my value is. Take it or leave it, you know, like, and so that's a big part of it. And that's what kind of struck me about Taj, because I don't sense that Taj, my gut sense is that would need an agent, but he went in there and kind of killed it without one.
Well, the difference back then was he's negotiating a 5-year deal. So it's one negotiation. Basically, like maybe you're prepping for this negotiation, but it's one negotiation. Now you don't deal with it for 5 years. In the modern era, that's not the way it works anymore. You're working deals all the time. There's 100 emails. There's constant market analysis that you have to be doing, tracking data, your analytics of your social reach. So I think an agent works harder for the money now than they would have back then, which
Yeah.
might be why they didn't exist back then, to Shane Dorian's kind of rationale, which we could discuss. But I honestly, I feel like for anybody listening who may be negotiating, whether they're an athlete or agent, Scott, shaking up your drinkag1.com/surf. Speaking of,
You know, I was trying to do it in a very like nonchalant, as if I was examining the bottle as like, oh wow, look how neat this is.
look at all these phytonutrients. Um, so what I think you should, anybody listening who might be working in this space, um, I would advise if you are negotiating for yourself, you're not on the brand side, but you're negotiating on yourself for the paycheck side. You have to be looking forward. Brands are going to be looking backwards at comps. They're going to be saying, what did we pay somebody last year? What was our most recent one? That's what we're kind of basing our numbers off of. Nathan Florence, on the other hand, he's looking forward. He's going, I've grown my YouTube channel 30,000 followers every single month. My socials, this many followers. So I'm going to be worth more next month than I'm worth more now. And by the way, these platforms are changing, and I'm at the cutting edge of how to drive the algorithm, not respond to the algorithm. I'm driving it because I'm the content creator. So I think if you are savvy, and maybe Taj was way back then, he's like, dude, I'm on the cutting edge of surfing. I'm going to throw a crazier air next week than I did last week. So yeah, maybe you paid so and so 1.5, you're going to pay me 1.65. That's the way that you should be thinking. And by the
Yeah.
way, if you're not thinking that way, it might be because you're not being innovative in that way. And
Yeah.
so you are already in the past. So if you are on this kind of fringe or pushing edge of either content creation or athleticism, then start adopting that mentality in your negotiations as well.
Yeah. Good. That's good insight. Tell me what you thought about, I mean, I thought Shane Dorian's stuff was really interesting. I mean, it's kind of like you can't get enough of the guys that they've really started to highlight throughout these things. Ryan Miller, Shane Dorian, Jamie O'Brien, Nathan Florence, they're all really great communicators. And so they're good for these episodes. Shane
So
Dorian.
So if I was just talking about if you were on the athlete side negotiating, now I'm going to say if I was on the brand side negotiating, I would be investing in intelligence as much as talent. And I think Shane Dorian, still riding for Billabong at the age of 50, whatever he is now, is the ultimate success story. Shane never, well, I shouldn't say never. He did get the top paycheck from Billabong for a short period of time, probably until Taj came along. But it he was a justifiable paycheck. You know, like if you're not making the $4 million a year, uh, you're less likely to get cut. And so he was making a reasonable paycheck for the amount of exposure that he was giving the brand. So he stayed on the ledger for them throughout. You know, they have to make a cut the $4 million guy, you know, he's not even putting stickers on his board anymore or whatever. So it's easy to find flaws in that guy. Whereas Shane quietly toiling away. And the fact that he's still getting paid by them, I think, is a reflection of the value that he adds to that brand. And so if I were the brand, I would be looking at that again, intelligence and hard work ethic, I guess, as much as talent itself.
And I almost feel like there's a good person quotient, if you will, like a good person scale, you know,
Always.
because we watch these things, and I won't name names, but there's if you were to put a scale 1 to 10, 10 being the best, Dorian's a 10. And there are others that fall in the that might, you know, fall based on how you view it as eights or sixes even, you know. And if you're a six on the good guy quotient, you know, you need to kind of
You
tweak
might,
your, and maybe you
well,
can't, maybe that's just who you are. You're just kind of, you know,
ain't
not the
that the
greatest
truth?
guy.
I mean, maybe you can improve upon it, but I think you're right. When times are fat, the six gets paid. But when
Yeah.
times need to get fat needs to get trimmed, the six is the one that goes, regardless of talent, I think.
Dorian's a 10,
Totally
you
across.
know.
And I think he was a 10 back then. He's become an 11.
Who can you name that's also right there on the good guy quotient that's in the public sphere? Maybe Lopez?
Jerry.
Lopez is a 9. No, I don't know. I don't know.
Jerry probably has some detractors.
Who
I mean,
who are let's focus on who are the 10s because Dorian's a 10. I would say John
Ma
John's a 10.
Machado,
Machado's a 10.
Sean Thompson.
Sean Thompson probably has some detractors.
Hmm.
I mean, everyone's gonna have some silly haters on, you know, trolls, but
I think the thing I like about Shane is he had detractors at different times, but I feel like he's confronted those and like, you know, head on, or I don't know, maybe with a little bit of hindsight and like made amends. Like he seems like the kind of guy who
you
does
know
that.
what's interesting? I've been on surf trips with a lot of pro surfers, and there's guys that you paddle out with, and they're just gonna friggin' you don't even exist in the water, like say an Indo or whatever. Frankly, Andy was like that. You know, I've surfed with Dorian. Dorian's the kind of guy that'll be like, you know what, you go. He's just a nice human being. I mean, I guess it's just this, maybe his parents were just wonderful or something. He's just a good human being. Another guy like that who was mentioned, Alex Gray.
Oh yeah,
Super good guy. Like a guy that would just be like, you know what? You go on this one.
totally.
I'm gonna catch a bunch of waves next week when I go to Indo or you know. And so it's kind of interesting, and you know, there certainly are, you know, guys that don't have that sort of aloha spirit. And
So
by the way, I was one of those people for years and years and years, you know.
yeah,
Uh,
I still struggle not to be, you know.
God forbid, but luckily I guess as you get older, you just kind of have to be.
Um, I've got another hot take for you.
Who's an 11? Do you got any more 11s?
I no, not off the
Is
top of my
Dorian
head.
our only 11? Right now he is,
I
huh?
could, I mean, look, it's like the who's the best surfer to never win a world title. I need time to think about it. It's hard right
Oh,
off the
by the
cuff.
way, I feel like we owe a shout out to Tony Roberts. I saw a thing on YouTube. He did a whole piece on this.
That's what
And
I started off the entire conversation with that.
okay, well, I appreciate that, but I just want to, and
Okay.
I just, you know, I didn't revisit our discourse, but
Yeah, no.
I saw it on YouTube. I'm like, oh my God, did we give Tony enough of credit for this? Because he did a
Yeah.
whole thing, and listeners should go out and watch Tony's YouTube on that because it's good.
So our initial thing came from a listener call. But before I
Okay,
played
right.
that listener call, I did say this conversation comes up regularly. Tony Roberts just did a long deep dive on this, and he's doing it on Instagram too.
Anyway, I
Um,
interrupted you. You were
no,
talking
no,
more
no.
about.
Well, I have another hot take for you. I'll try to think of another 11 when I get the chance. But until then, I'm going to make, I don't know, a half thought out argument that Dane Reynolds almost single handedly took down the entire system. Um, because
Not on purpose or on purpose?
no, not on purpose at all. But look, Taj, it's first of all, it's kind of shocking to me how much things got inflated in such a short period of time. Which I guess is reflective of human nature. It's just when times are great, you overspend. You're just like, yeah, it's always going to be, I'm going to earn more next year than I did last year. So just keep going, you know? But ultimately, the surf industry was doing that. And so Taj negotiated, specifically, the number was 1.65 for 5 years. And it was, I don't know if it was the most at the time, but it was definitely like a benchmark. And within a very short period of time, John comes along and he's getting 3.5. So more than double, what Taj was making. And then right there, Dane is getting 4.2 for 8 years. Forget about the 5 year contract now, 8 years, 4.2. So I think there was this, boiling point for the surf industry where it's like, okay, we can justify 1.65. You know what? We're making double that. Like, let's just keep going. So, okay, now John comes along. We're going to continue to see growth. Let's pay him double, more than double what we paid Taj. And then Dane comes along. Let's just keep doubling up. The problem is Dane was too aloof. Dane was raised in an environment, where those contracts were kind of available when from the time he was very young, and he was getting paid well from fairly young, that it was all just pretend money, it seems like to him. So as Stephen Bell said, who was working for Quicksilver, he wouldn't he would cut off the jeans to make jean shorts. And Quicksilver's like, we're not selling jean shorts. Don't cut the jeans off. You're putting the sticker upside down on your board. You're no longer putting the sticker on your board. You're drawing the logo. So while there was a boiling point for what the industry could afford to pay, they overpaid Dane, figured out where that boiling point was. And by the way, the athlete is now no longer servicing the obligations of the contract. And not outrightly, because he did still have the logo. He was still technically wearing the clothing. He was just cutting the pants. Like, he figured out almost like this gray area in the contract to where he's still legally and technically honoring it, but he's really operating outside of the spirit of the contract.
Yeah.
And it broke. He freaking
Yeah.
broke the thing. I mean,
Yeah.
there's external global economic factors that really, there was an
Big
economic
ones.
recession, right?
Big ones.
that
Yeah.
that Quicksilver then filed BK, had to restructure everything, and the whole team got let go. So it wasn't single-handedly Dane,
No.
but Dane was at the fulcrum of this, and his behavior definitely reset everything. And so,
Yeah.
which by the way, I'm
It,
not
it was
even
just a cog in the wheel
look,
regarding Quicksilver's downfall.
I actually applaud Dane because the system was broken, and him embracing his spirit is a true surf spirit, like, of being counterculture and just like, it doesn't matter how much you're paying me. I'm going to be me no matter what. The money has nothing to do with it. So I actually love that about Dane. I love Dane at that time. I still love Dane now, and I've always loved his surfing. But I am aware of it was a breaking point for the industry.
Funny, it's almost like Dane Reynolds was sort of a meme that represented what was about to happen. Like because we've spoken about this before, but Quicksilver was making horrible decisions, buying Rosignol for some ridiculous amount, buying Cleveland Golf. And the reason they were doing this is because they had shareholders that were like, hey, we expect, 10% growth every year because that's what we signed up for. That's what Quicksilver was doing from 85 to 2005. And so the
You
people at
can't
Quicksilver were
grow that
like,
market. Yeah, you can't grow that market that
Quicksilver
much.
was like,
So
okay, we'll buy this and that'll
yeah,
give us some more growth and that'll give us, and I'm sure they bought some other silly stuff. And so Dane sort of is a meme for all of the bad decisions that the board or the CEOs or whoever was in charge of making those, making these, but like that was at the point of this downfall of Quicksilver.
I think Dane was the hero we needed, to like disrupt the whole system
He was
that
the
had.
he was like Mr. White. He was like, what was Mr. White? Heisenberg or,
Oh yeah, yeah, from Breaking Bad.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think he the system had gotten so corporate and didn't reflect real surfing at all, basically. And so Dane came in with the ultimate surfer ethos, cashed the craziest paycheck anybody had gotten in surfing, and it broke the system, basically. So
Yeah.
again, the hero we didn't know we needed, but
The other thing here that isn't mentioned, which is sort of timely, is there was also non-endemics that were coming into the space with a bunch of money. Nike, Target, remember Kolohe and I think Carissa? They were getting big money from Target, and that probably pushed Quicksilver into going, oh man, like, are we going to lose Dane to, we better give him some money. And again, I'm just assuming a lot of this is all rather, just you and me.
no, that's specifically what happened, though. I mean,
Yeah.
Blair Marlin talks about getting an offer from Nike and taking it to Dane and saying, do you want this money from Nike, or we can leverage it to get what you actually want from Quicksilver because you're up for renegotiation, and they
Yeah.
show that pros and cons list that they wrote down in their own handwriting.
Yeah.
But speaking of non-endemics, another story that I found interesting was Damian Farrenfort, who's managed Jordy Smith, um, talking about DVS, which is not exactly non-endemic. They were a skate shoe company, but they were paying Jordy $250K a year, and Jordy wasn't wearing the shoes.
And weren't they one of those many companies that was purchased by Billabong? Billabong sort of did the same thing. They were a little bit more board sport oriented. They bought Von Zipper. I think they bought DVS. They bought Custom maybe, which I don't even know, was that accessories company or something?
Yeah, I didn't
Or
know
they
DVS was
created
part of
it.
that.
I think they bought Sector 9. So they bought all these companies and then they tried to glom their riders onto this, which is the case here that you're speaking of.
I didn't know that DVS was part of that
I could be wrong, but that was
conglomerate.
what I assumed.
I don't know that for sure. I thought DVS operated independently, but I don't know either. But yeah, 250 a year, and he's not even wearing the shoes, which is crazy to me.
At a trade show. He's
And he
not
said,
even
yeah, they're
wearing them
going
at a
to the
trade show.
trade show to see DVS, and he's wearing Converse. And it's like,
This is the
wow.
one place you need to wear the shoes. I don't care if you don't wear the shoes for the rest of the year. We're going to a trade show. You kind of have to wear the DVS shoes.
How
That's a fail, dude.
unbelievable is
That is a
that?
fail.
I
Come on.
know, it's shocking
Especially
to
on
me.
almost on Dumas. Like, how did you not just crowbar those shoes onto his feet?
I know. Um, so you talked about um Ryan Miller, you mentioned people who you like even more after watching the series, and you mentioned Ryan Miller. I agree with you. They interviewed Joel Tudor, and they said on the screen with his name, it said straight talker, Joel Tudor, world champ longboarder / straight talker. I didn't get much straight talk out of Joel Tudor. I know we get straight talk from Joel Tudor on Instagram, but in this series, he's the one guy who didn't reveal how much money he makes, which I wanted to hear because he gets underpaid, in terms of he's a longboarder, so he's going to get underpaid. He's as influential, I think, as a lot of other people, but probably wasn't compensated adequately for it. But Ryan Miller, on the other hand, I find to be the ultimate straight talker. I love Ryan goes straight. He just tells you the numbers. He tells you who's the person. He goes straight for it. So
Yeah, it's a great episode, right? And it's fascinating to, I guess each episode seems to have sort of a moment where you're like, okay, this is sort of the money shot, you know? And for sure that was Taj at the end because money basically got in the way of a personal lifelong relationship, not only with him, but with his family, his parents. These were people that lived right next, that were in the same neighborhood
yeah,
as Taj. Like he drove by them on his way to go surfing. He surfed with them.
yeah.
They were his best mates for years, decades. And money put a wedge in between that relationship. Um and frankly, I Billabong and Taj basically ended up going, both of these entities are kind of screwing me.
I find that to be a little bit disingenuous. So specifically, part of that $1.65 million contract for 5 years was Billabong had just purchased Dakine and they wanted him to ride for Dakine accessories. So that was going to be rolled into that. And he was getting $20,000 a year from Creatures of Leisure, his neighbor's brand. And so he had to turn to Creatures, and he actually tried to tell Billabong, no, I'm not going to do the Dakine deal. I still want to work with Creatures. They said, no, it's not available. You have to do it this way. So he had to turn to Creatures and say, hey, can you let me out of this contract 6 months early? You know, $10,000 basically. You're paying me 20 a year, 6 months early. It's going to cost 10,000. Let me out of this. And they said, no, we're not going to let you out of it. And so Billabong said, well, in that case, since you're not going to let go of that contract, we're going to dock your pay $300K. So Taj lost 300 minus the 10 that he was going to earn from Creatures. So 290K he loses. And that disrupted his friendship, and it took time for them to get over that. And to your point, Taj's response was, screw both these guys. It's just about money for them. And my thought is, no, Taj, it's just about money for you. You're the one collecting the paycheck here. You know what I mean? Like, you should be grateful that either of them are willing to pay you anything. How dare you feel offended that you're going to be making 1.65 million bucks this year?
Yeah, but I mean, look, on some level, the people at Billabong are, on some level, you're friends with Taj. This is the guy that's driving your brand's message, one of four. And you know that this little, much smaller entity, Creatures, has no leverage at all. The only leverage they have is, no, we're keeping you on this contract for 6 months. I mean, I just feel like the loving thing to do, which is not a word you're going to hear in business negotiations, is what's the loving. That's not a phrase you hear. But the kind and loving thing to do was for Billabong to just go, okay, 6 more months. We'll just keep everything good. And, like, it was almost like an FU to Taj. Like, it's going to be 300 grand. Like, that seems like, I don't know. It just seems like, from a business
It's
standpoint, okay, you're just going to screw the guy that's driving your brand. You're just going to screw him over for 300 grand because his buddy wouldn't let him out of a $10,000 deal. I
it's
don't know.
hard to say. It's hard to say screw them over when you're writing the $1.65 million paycheck to the guy.
No,
That I
I
wouldn't
look,
use the term screw him over. I would say, hey, once you look, we're all friends here. And thankfully, we've all done well enough in life to where we're in this decision making realm, sitting at the board or at the table together. And once you step up to accepting 1.65 million, your feelings can't get as hurt.
well,
Like you have
I
to
guess
put
what's
your feelings
missing,
aside.
I guess what's missing here is I'm sure that Taj said, hey, Billabong, I'm going to sign this deal with you. Don't worry, I'm going to get out of the Creatures deal. You can trust me on this. They're my friends. They're going to let me out. I think that, see, we don't really know. That's the thing. Like, you and I can't sit here and really pontificate or give much in-depth analysis because we don't really know how it went down. But I'm sensing that Taj probably said, yeah, I'll sign the deal. And don't worry, I'll get out of the Creatures deal. Then I went to Creatures, and Creatures was like, what? No, that's not cool. You just signed a deal behind our back. So again, I'm assuming all of this. And frankly, probably, what happens when you assume, we make an ass out of both you and me.
Well, I don't know. I think at that level, I guess while I think that Taj shouldn't have had his feelings hurt and he should be grateful for the paycheck, I also love that Taj got his feelings hurt because it endears me to him just as a human. But I think your earlier discussion of he negotiated well for himself, he didn't need a manager. I think the manager could have looked at this and said, we have a real opportunity here. You should be part owner in Creatures. Tell Billabong, keep the 300K, carve that out of that contract. I am going to invest some of this 1.65 that I'm earning over here. I'm going to give, whatever the number is to Creatures to help grow the business. And now I'm have equity in Creatures of Leisure, which by the way is what Mick Fanning has done.
Right. He's with Creatures, isn't he?
He's part owner. I don't know what percentage it is, if it's majority or not, but he is invested in that brand and now he's partnered with it and he will forever be with them and potentially benefit from it as they grow. So that was an opportunity where Taj might have benefited from some.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah.
Hey, let's take a quick break and we'll come back with more of the Spit Podcast. Welcome back. We're talking all things surf on the Spit Podcast.
Welcome back. I thought this comment with longtime listener, by the way, Keith Grace left a comment on stabmag.com on this episode. And he said, quote, great episode, of course, but also the darkest one yet. Of course, this topic, it had to be dark, but above all else, for Christ's sake, can someone in the industry please embrace and take care of Clay Marzo with an open mind and heart? Is that too much to ask? End quote. I thought ending the episode with the Clay Marzo bit was actually really poignant and well done. We all want to hear more about Clay, and Clay, it's publicized. Clay has Asperger's, and so that creates certain limitations in terms of his social, ability to connect and honor obligations through the surf contract and just be out in public and all that sort of thing. And so they discuss some of that about Clay. But I love this take from Keith, which is he is so special in surfing. Like his style of surfing is so unique and incredible. It really feels worth it for somebody, a brand, to coddle it and nurture it. Rather than trying to make Clay operate within the bounds of how the industry operates, it seems like you could find the right person at the right brand who can nurture it and really help cultivate and let him be who he is and have a mutually beneficial relationship through that.
Yeah, it was a kind of a heartwarming part of the show, wasn't it?
I loved it.
What was the guy's name that really helped him out for Tenori?
So,
Or not riding for Tenori, but the guy, I think that guy works for Tenori, or what was his
no.
name?
So my Duke of the week is Logan Dulien.
Logan Dulien. Thank you. And I apologize for not remembering his name. I'm going to write that down. What a great spirit Logan has for just doing all this for, in service of Clay Marzo. I think it's yes, please. So let's make him the Duke Kahanamoku Logan for sure.
Logan Dulien is the creator of the Snapped series of films. They're premiering the final movie, Snapped 5, this week at the US Open. So tickets are available if you want to go grab those. I forget where. Their physical tickets are available, but you can do digital tickets too. Just go to Snapped 5's Instagram account. But Logan Dulien is really, really, he was tight with Andy back in the day, negotiating, help doing some of those contracts. So Logan, he doesn't operate as a manager or an agent, but he has all these connections through these brands. He's also making these films, and through these films, he has invested in athletes over and over and over again. Some of them have contracts, some of them don't. He's been trying to get Mateus Hurdy a deal for a while now because he really believes in that talent. But also featuring these surfers in films, he'll even, when they don't have contracts, he will fund their travel for them to bring them on surf trips so that they can create their own parts. And Clay Marzo is somebody who he's taken under his wing because he does believe in Clay's ability as a surfer. So he talks about negotiating his deal with Ruka, negotiating his deal with Album for zero commission, basically, just to help Clay out because he knows Clay should be surfing for a living and we all want to see Clay surf, basically. So I absolutely admire and appreciate that about Logan. I don't know if you remember the story from about a year ago, but Logan, I did a long podcast interview with him, but he had his identity stolen. He parked his car in Newport Beach. This turned out to be a gang, stole his phone and his wallet, locked the car, ditched the keys. So that gave them a couple of hours of time to actually steal his identity, but they were able to unlock his phone, evaporate the bank accounts, transfer stocks, crypto, all of that into their accounts. And it turns out that it was a syndicate, an international syndicate who had been doing this for a period of time. And they were doing it to multiple people a day and getting away with literally millions of dollars a day in theft. And Logan was able to take them down. He got the FBI involved, got the banks involved, got Amex's fraud department involved, and they were able to take down this syndicate. So Logan's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And yeah, he was sort of the good guy star of this episode in many, many ways. And it's funny, I was thinking about Clay Marzo in relation to greatest surfers that have never won a world title. And then because it got me thinking, well, screw that. Who are just the greatest surfers of all time? Like now that's ridiculous to even try to pinpoint that. The greatest surfers of all time. But certainly Clay Marzo is probably somewhere in that discussion because he's not marketable. He lacks completely the ability for a brand to grab him and go, hey, this guy's going to sell us some board shorts. You know what I mean? There's no way you can get him to do anything that's other than surfing on film.
I
Or
I I had a similar thought as I was watching this, which was the nexus of talent, marketability, and the surfer's willingness to engage in those things is kind of certain,
magic.
yeah, a certain alchemy, right? Like,
Yeah.
so my follow-up thought was, I wonder how many phenomenal world-class talents have come and gone that just never fit those other two parts of the equation. And Clay
Yeah.
Marzo might be the top name in that conversation.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was getting at too. And then I was thinking, well, okay, Clay's really good for like snap, for like, we love to watch him actually physically surf. And then I was thinking, there's guys who don't want, are there guys that don't
Oh
even
yeah,
want that, that are like, no,
tons.
like I live in Alaska. You don't even know about me, but I rip better than Clay Marzo. Or probably somewhere in Central America, there's some guys that,
Yeah,
I don't know.
for sure. Or Central Coast. Like I've spent time in the Central Coast, and there's local rippers who it's like want zero attention, and
Yeah, that's
because
sort of
it's,
that's sort of the nature of that space, of that area. It's
I
like,
think West Oz is like that, I'm
yeah,
sure, where it's like, don't, I don't want any attention because it will exploit this resource. And I think ultimately the logic there is if I exploited all of my talent and became rich and famous, traveled the world, made a big career, in the end, when I retired, all that I would try to do is come back and carve out a little space on the Central Coast like this, you know? And so what's the point in doing that for a period of time? I've already got it right here. I could see that's why, there was I don't know, a thought about Maui surfers for a period of time where it's like they don't want to go to the North Shore in the wintertime and compete with a million other people for the cameras. They've got killer waves right here. So they have all the talent of the North Shore guys or Australian guys or California guys who go to the North Shore to vie for that, but they're not going to have the career because they don't go fight for it. And so I think that I kind of admire that mentality and I like it a lot.
let me ask you this. Do you anticipate Clay Marzo being somebody that you want to watch on film surfing? Because we've acknowledged that really that's his superpower, is just watching him surf. He's an incredible surfer. Anything else is not going to be in the equation, right? So, do you anticipate looking forward to seeing him surf when he's 46 years old?
No,
How old do you think he is now?
32.
36.
You
I
already looked
looked
it
it
up?
up.
Okay.
Yeah. He's 36. So if you're trying to do a deal with him to get him kind of like this guy deserves to, which he does right now, he's incredible. I think he won the Rip Curl Cup just a couple of years ago, or maybe last year or something.
I don't
Anyway,
remember when.
he's worthy right now, is my point. But you know,
Do a year-to-year deal with him.
what's Clay going to be doing when he's 46 years old?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't
I,
either.
I mean, you have to. he'd have to
Because
be
frankly,
invested.
you know what people do? They reinvent themselves. Dorian was great at this. Um, Nathan Hedge is doing that right now, and it's a sincere thing. You know, it's like I want to stay healthy. I want to surf. I want to mindfulness, wellness, health, all of these things. This is going to keep me doing what I love to do for the rest of my life as long as I can do it. You know, and I'm going to have a public facing persona to do this. You know,
So yeah, I like I said, I would do a year-to-year deal with Clay, and part of my assessment each year would be how much is he investing in his longevity? Is he taking care of his diet? Is he doing anything physical to maintain flexibility? You know, he's incredibly flexible. So like if that falls apart, what happens next for him? So I would just I guess Nathan Hedge and Shane Dorian didn't have that health thing when they were 32 or 36, but if you're tracking it year by year, you'll start to see indicators of them embracing that so that they can make their career longer. Um, my other thought was um, regarding that whole conversation of like how many guys out there aren't doing it in the public eye is the benefit of doing it in the public eye is that you then get world travel and that can expedite your learning. So if you're only surfing the waves in the Central Coast, there is somewhat of a glass ceiling in terms of advancing your surfing, or at least the speed at which you can advance your surfing. If you take the contract and start to do it professionally, and you could do it 24/7 and you can chase swell around the globe, you're then applying your talents at Cloudbreak and expediting your learning curve. You know what I mean? And then Pipeline and then elsewhere. So I do think that there is actually a benefit to the professional surf thing if you can manage it for your own um,
yeah, but
improvement
if
of
you're on
the
the
talent.
Central Coast and you're just locking down and you don't want any attention, why do you really even care about progressing your surfing to a place that, like, at some point you're like, you know what, I do really good bottom turns. I pull into these barrels on the Central Coast. That's really what surfing's all about anyway. Let's just cut to the chase. We all just want to get tubed. Like, yeah, when you're 19, doing big airs is super rad and fun, blah, blah, blah. But when you're 38, you just want to pull into fat pits. And
So,
eventually you come to the realization that that's what surfing really is. It's
right.
pulling into the tube.
So that guy wants a fatter pit and he wants a blue water pit and he
Well,
wants a
he's going
longer
to
pit.
travel. See, that's the beauty. He's actually going to go to Tavarua and get those pits and then go home and have his little killer little scene on the Central Coast. I keep
Not if he
thinking of
can.
that kid, that guy, the goofy foot guy. Is it Tyler? Taylor?
Nate Tyler.
Yeah, Nate Tyler. I did a trip or two with him. Great kid, super red hot surfer. And I think of he's sort of that Central Coast guy that's probably in his 30s now and in lockdown mode, probably married with kids and doesn't really want any more attention, has already done the aerial thing and is probably finding big fat pits and can go to Puerto or wherever and score a couple weeks out of the year.
Have you seen the sculptures that he builds?
No,
So Nate, he's a metal worker.
really,
Yeah, what do you
that's
call
cool.
that? Metallurgist?
Yeah, that's a tough
Yeah.
word to say. Metallurgist.
He builds these incredible metal sculptures that would go like in your yard or something that are balancing acts. You look at it and it looks very asymmetrical, but it's all hinged on like one little connection point of like that looks like it can't hold the weight of it, but it's structured in such a way that it balances beautifully and even like spins and rotates and stuff. Like the wind will kind of push it. They are incredible works of art.
That's random and sounds fascinating. I had no idea. That's
He lives in a yurt off the grid.
Nate Tyler. Good for him, man. He's my Duke Hanamoku, by the way. Although I
Uh,
was going to say congrats to Joe Turpel. Joe won an Emmy for his work with the NBC Olympics and surfing. And so well deserved. I'm a big fan of Joe's. Joe emits a very sincere, positive attitude, and I'm here for it. So
well,
congrats on the Emmy, Joe Turpel.
it's also worth stating that Dick Metz's documentary was up for an Emmy as well. They did not win. it went to, in the category, it went to a documentary that was deserving, actually. I mean, they would have been deserving too, but this was like, you can't argue it. It was like tracking the timeline of these kids who were brought up in the welfare system, and tracking their journey. So it was really a sweet, poignant film. But Dick Metz, the documentary is called The Birth or just Birth of the Endless Summer. And, I've interviewed Dick Metz a number of times. I probably have like, there's 8 episodes, but it's probably a total of 13 hours of Dick Metz sharing stories.
Yeah.
And I don't think we ever got past 1973.
Dude, 1974 is probably 8 more episodes.
It's
I
literally
love
like
Dick Metz, and Dick Metz is the greatest.
Dick Metz. I mean, it can't be overstated. It sounds like hyperbole. It is not. Dick Metz was tight friends with Bruce Brown, Hobie Alter, the iCow family, obviously the Whitmore family in South
Yeah,
Africa,
that's a big one.
and through that connection, altered South African surfing for the rest of time. Like you could not extract that moment in time. I mean, he does a random jaunt on Murph the Surf. We're just like talking about stuff. He's like, oh yeah, Murph the Surf. Oh, I was tight friends with him. And like, I got him this surfboard, and then he went up and stole that diamond, and then the FBI chased him, and then I think he might have shot a woman, and then he ended up in jail. Like, and then I had dinner. We got out of jail, and I had dinner with him, and he was like a pastor who's preaching, and and it's like, Dick, like everybody.
Yeah.
So and then he's telling me this story about before he went on the 3-year journey around the world, which then inspired the Endless Summer. When he came back, he shared all those stories and the connection with John Whitmore with Bruce Brown. And then Bruce Brown was like, this sounds incredible. I'm going to make a film about this. And then he went and made the Endless Summer. So prior to Dick going on that trip, he was going to Colorado, and they were driving through the desert near Las Vegas, and a drunk driver had fallen asleep at the wheel, and his car was in the middle of the road, and it was in the middle of the night, unlit. And so Dick's friend driving crashed into that drunk asleep driver, and Dick Metz got thrown from the vehicle and almost died. Like it was a near-death experience. He had a full body cast from his armpits down for a long period of time. He spent a year in college in a wheelchair in recovery. And like through that experience and through, I forget the name of the magazines at the time, but he was, reading magazines that were about world travel, and it showed the bare-breasted women in Tahiti and the African tribes, that have never seen a white man and all this kind of stuff. Through reading that, he's like, if I ever get out of this chair, I'm traveling the world. That was the impetus for it.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
I'm like, I've talked to Dick again for 13 hours on the record, and he never told me about the near-death experience car crash. Like, how am I only
1974. I told you it's going to be 8 episodes.
How am I only hearing about this now?
Yeah,
So,
that's
anyways, I know people have seen that movie advertised, The Birth of the Endless Summer, because it was finished 2 years ago and it started doing the film circuit 2 years ago.
Some Richard Yellen, isn't it?
Correct. Richard Yellen's the filmmaker. And incidentally, he was a Laguna Beach Richard was born and raised, not born, but raised in Laguna Beach, and was a lifeguard in Laguna Beach. Dick Metz was a lifeguard in Laguna Beach 40 years prior.
Yeah.
So they have that connection. But the film, my point is, it's finally available for streaming. So if you've heard about this film because you saw it doing the rounds 2 years ago, now it is available for streaming. So you can rent it on Amazon Prime. You can rent it on Apple. You can rent it on YouTube, Vimeo, all that. I think it's $4.99. Well worth it.
Yeah, that's incredible. And frankly, people should go back into your catalog and listen to the Dick Metz episodes, because they're probably, I bet you would rate them as, if not the best, right there at the top of the stuff you've done is the interviews with Dick.
Entirely. I mean, I almost take it for granted, like, oh yeah, Dick Metz, but people don't know. People still don't know who he is.
There are others, maybe not as prolific with stories and with like 6 degrees of separation as Metz, but there are others out there who still who are as communicative, who are as, well-versed and just smart. Dick's just incredibly smart and intelligent, so that helps as far as telling stories that are out there. There's people that are out there that we could still tap into that Like for instance, and they're older and they're ready to tell their story. I think probably Rabbit is like that. I think I think that somebody could do long forms with Rabbit Bartholomew. I think Mark Richards is probably like that.
Fred
Um,
Hemmings.
Fred is for sure ready to tell a story. He's getting up there, and hopefully his memory is still pretty good. I think Randy Rarick is like that. You got to get the guy that's really willing to go and
Bob.
tell the true
Bob.
story with their emotions and with their thoughts and with their biases and warts and
Bob.
all sort of
Bob
thing.
McTavish.
Bob's
I,
great.
I've got an interview scheduled in a few weeks with Joey Cabell.
Yeah, that's probably gonna. Hopefully, that'll be a great one. I don't
Yeah.
know why it wouldn't be.
Yeah. So yeah, I
Because I
mean,
remember I one time went to. I was lucky enough to be invited to a lunch with Ricky Grigg, Dr. Ricky Grigg at Scripps Institute of Oceanography. And I walked into the room and I sat at a table with Pesman Fry, Jeff Devine, Fernando. That was just my table. These were like San Diego surf luminaries. And Dr. Ricky Grigg it was his retirement party. And he got up and gave a speech. And I mean, he talked about um, Tiger Espere and just like he had so many great stories. And so it's guys like that,
yeah.
right? That are old enough and they want to tell their story. Guys that are
Well,
40 haven't yet lived long enough to tell their complete story and are willing to tell their complete story. Tom Carroll might be one that you could do long form. By the way, he might be right there underneath Dorian as a 10, you know.
yeah, that's a good point. Totally.
But
I
anyway,
guess
there's a lot of guys out there, so it's fun to be able to tap into that.
the other thing is at that era of the Dick Metzes, it was a small sport, so everybody knew everybody. Once you get into the Tom Carroll era, it's a little bit more fractured into different regions and different things going on that Tom can't exactly be embedded in all of it. But in those early days, if you were embedded,
Yeah.
you were embedded in all of it. And so I think that's why that group of guys in their 90s and late 80s is kind of essential to get on record now. And I've said it before, but it's worth stating again, like my purpose with Surf Splendor is to get it straight from the horse's mouth. So like let the people who created surf history and surf culture tell their stories, uh certainly from their own perspective. Like this isn't a comprehensive view, but let them tell it from their perspective. And I'm just trying to get out of the way. Like as an interviewer,
Yeah.
I'll tee them up if they need to, and I'll have an outline and ask questions. But in the case of Dick Metz, just get out of the way. Like let him just go.
Yeah. I
So
did that with recently, the one that comes to mind is a couple of years ago when I was out in the Telos, I did a two-parter with the
yeah.
guy who started the surfing village, Paolo. And and do you know who's another guy? Is Morris Cole.
Oh yeah.
Morris, man, he's ready to go. But anyway, yeah,
I've done a couple with him.
I saw a picture yesterday. Uh it had Wally Froyseth, John Kelly, Buzzy Trent, and George Downing, and they were all looking off at the surf, and I was like, man, if you could interview those guys long form, you'd have some. I think Walter Hoffman might have been in the picture too. Those stories of that early Makaha scene, I don't know how well captured they are. Those guys are all gone, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got a bonus show to do. Do you have time for the bonus show?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, let's wrap this up then. A couple final thoughts here on Spit. Um, the Surfrider Foundation, obviously, the ocean needs more friends now more than ever. Despite Surfrider's many successes and wins over the last 41 years, greater threats are faced to the ocean now in 2025 than ever before, and especially with kind of dismantling and defunding of organizations like NOAA and the EPA. They actually need more investment, not less. And so if you've ever felt inclined to get involved, now would be a phenomenal time. So you can go to surfrider.org and see specific ways to kind of get involved and let your voice be known to Congress, but also just become a member at Surfrider and they will utilize that to do their work. And you can do it for as little as $5 a month or as much as you want. You set the level of membership. So go to surfrider.org to help in that endeavor. My must-see moment presented by Treeswax. Scott, Treeswax is the only petroleum-free surf wax out there, and we've got a 20% off code for listeners. The code is SPIT on treeswax.com. Christian at Treeswax is also offering a money-back guarantee online if you don't like the product. So no
Heck
reason
yeah.
not. But here's my
Yeah.
must-see moment. This went down yesterday. I'm going to play it for you. And share it with listeners who are watching on YouTube. Have you seen this clip?
I know it's been pumping. I haven't seen this
So this
specific
is
clip.
Matahi Drole.
Oh yeah, yeah, I've seen this. This is incredible.
Matahi Drole yesterday at Teahupo'o. There we go. Free fall drop, full levitation over the foam ball for like an extended period of time. It is unbelievable. So we'll watch it again in slow-mo. Obviously,
Yeah, if you can stop it, can you stop it when he's like not here? Keep going, but there's a moment
where he's foam
like
ball
yeah,
levitation.
like right here. Yes, you nailed it. That's friggin' extended, man. That's some fin cavitation right there.
So it is a gnarly,
Right there.
gnarly.
Look at that. That's beautiful.
It's a gnarly, gnarly wave, first of all, just like crazy wave, right? But it's a free fall drop. He sets a line, and then for the almost the extent of the ride, it really feels like he is zero gravity. Like if you were fully planted on the board, you'll get bucked off. And so he somehow levitates and lets the board almost go through different lines and undulations from the foam ball and then just reconnects as he's getting spit out of the barrel. It's kind of the longest levitation I've ever seen. There's a couple of different angles of it. We just played one, and then there's also a really killer sequence. The sequence of photos, I think, allow you to kind of see those moments even in more detail. But Billy Kemper's calling this the best paddle and wave ever surfed at Teahupo'o, and I can't argue with it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It beyond the physical, it's almost spiritual. Like there's a level of mana that the Tahitian has here. And I don't know the word in Tahitian for mana, but it's just got this, it just feels like um, the generations before him were looking down on him and just gifting this wonderful talent and this wonderful wave. It's incredible.
Yeah. It really almost defies physics. I think the word for
Pure.
mana in Tahiti is mana, actually.
Yeah, I think it is too. I'm reading the new Hampton Sides has a new book out on Captain Cook, and it's basically it's all about his last. He did 3 voyages. This is his 3rd voyage, the one where he gets killed. It's pretty amazing. Um, people, you say Captain Cook, what do you think? You think, oh yeah, and you might not be a positive thought, and it probably shouldn't be, but this goes into the real depths of that last voyage, and it's fascinating. Really
What's it
great
called?
history. It's called I think it's called I could go get the book title. It's called it's by Hampton Sides, who's an author who I read a lot of his books, really great nonfiction writer. And I think the book's called The Wide Wide Sea or The Wide Wide Open Sea or something like that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I'll look for it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
sweet.
great read.
Well, anyways, thanks. drinkag1.com/surf and Real Water Sports, all of our sponsors. Of course, Surfrider Foundation, we love you. And Scott, we're going to go over and do bonus episode on Patreon if anybody wants to join us. Spit bonus pod.
Well, before we do that, let me tell you that it's called The Wide Wide Sea, Imperial Ambition, First Contact, and the Fateful Final Voyage of Captain James Cook. So Hampton Sides. Yeah, let's go. You know what? Until next time, adios and aloha. But right now, you're going to get the bonus section.